Hey guys, I'm Kelly and welcome back to the garden. Well, it's been a little while since I've uploaded a video to YouTube, and that's mainly because I have had so many jobs to get done around the garden and I just haven't been able to bring the camera out to record what I've been doing. But today I thought I would take you all on a bit of a walk around the garden to show you what I've been up to start preparing the garden for springtime. This area of the garden is probably one of my favourite in the garden because we've got this big archway that extends from one garden bed over to the other, and it goes pretty much the duration of the 10 metres of the garden beds. So although it doesn't look like much right now, when it is covered with leaves and vegetables or fruits, it really does look beautiful, and you can walk right under the archway. And last year we grew pumpkins under an archway and we were able to walk through and pick the pumpkins that were growing above our heads. It was really cool. We've made the archway with some Rio mesh. In the US, I think it might be called cattle panels. They come in 6 metre by 2.4 metre panels, and we just got them from our local hardware store. They are quite expensive, which is a downside for us in our area. One panel cost us about $120. So that is the downside. However, I do still like to use them in the garden because they're steel, so they are going to last a really long time. So I was happy to make the expense because I know that it's not something that I'm going to have to repurchase every year. So that's how I justified the expense. But this is a really great part of the garden, and I love growing vertically because I find that it saves me so much space in the garden. I'm able to fit a lot more plants in a smaller area because we're growing them vertically rather than letting them trail on the ground. And also it helps to keep the plants healthier as well. I find that you have less disease. Sorry, the sun has just come up through the trees. I find that we have less disease on the plants and also less bug damage as well. In this section of the garden, in spring and summer, I'll be planting my butternut pumpkin. So I started those seedlings. They're hardening off at the moment. They're just over near the greenhouse and they're not quite as big as what I would like them to be yet. So I'm waiting until they get a bit bigger and then I'll plant them out. Maybe at the end of the week or maybe next week sometime. But they are hardening off, so they'll be ready to come out into the garden soon. And we actually saved the seed from pumpkins that we grew in the garden last year, which is really exciting. When you save seed from a plant that you've grown in your garden, the next generation plant that you grow is a bit more acclimatized to your climate, to your environment. So hopefully you have a bit more of a healthy plant, which is really great. So if you can save your seeds, not only are you saving money on seeds, but you may end up with a healthier plant as well. So I suggest you give that a go. I started our butternut pumpkin seedlings in seed snails this year to trial a new way of starting seeds, and I'm actually really happy with it. If you haven't checked out that video, I'll pop the link above. I usually start my seeds in soil blocks, and although I love that method, it's quite time consuming. So I wanted to give something else a go. The seed snail was really quick and I was able to plant a lot of seeds, but I'm very excited to plant them out here in the garden bed. At the moment, on either side of the trellis, we've got some Silverbeet growing and some beetroot as well. And then down the front here, we've got some cos lettuce and some kale. So I like to kind of interplant a lot of different things all over the garden and not have designated spots for plants. I find if you plant all of your same variety of plants together, you're just kind of creating an open buffet for the pests. So I kind of like to, although I do have a space where I plant out the majority of my plants, I do like to have them elsewhere in the garden as well. And I found that works quite well. Radio, let's head over to the next bed. In this garden bed here, this is another 10 metre long garden bed. We've got some onion planted along the edges, and down the middle we've just put a trellis back in place for our cucumber seedlings. So yesterday I came out and I filled about half of the trellis with some cucumber seedlings. I didn't plant out all of them because I wasn't sure what the weather was going to do, and I didn't want a heap of seedlings that I needed to cover in case we had a bit of a cold snap again. So I did only plant out 5 cucumber plants, and I've got the rest of the trellis that's bare, so I may even plant out some more tomorrow or today. I'm not sure. But the variety of cucumber that we're growing this year is called Beit Alpha. It's a Lebanese style cucumber. And I actually did a video speaking about this cucumber. It is a good cucumber variety to grow in a greenhouse, so I'll be sure to link that video above. The onion variety that I've got growing in this garden bed is called Creamgold, which is a brown type of onion, and it probably isn't going to be ready for another few months, I'd say, probably another 3 months. I'll harvest it early summer, midsummer. But by the time the cucumber vine is really booming, I'll try and keep it trimmed back so the onions and the cucumbers don't interfere with each other. I grew them together last year and they did quite well. We had really good results, so I was happy to give it a go again this year. And we'll see how it goes. The trellis is 6 meters long and the garden bed is 10 meters long. So we've got 2 meters on either side of the trellis. I was going to put 2 trellises there, but I think instead of doing that, I will probably just plant some things at the ends of the trellis, like some chamomile or some sunflowers. I really loved growing sunflowers in the garden last summer because they just look so beautiful. They are great for pollinators, but they just look so pretty. One thing is we do have parrots that like to come into the garden and they liked to eat all of the sunflower seeds. So they were only a nice pretty sunflower for a short while before the parrots got in and started eating them. But that's okay. This year I'm going to plant some extra sunflowers. I might cover some with nets so I can save those seeds and then leave the other sunflowers to the parrots. In the garden bed behind me, we've got our Roma tomatoes. Earlier this week, I planted out 31 Roma tomato plants, and I actually got these plants from cuttings that I took from some Roma tomatoes that we had growing in our greenhouse over the winter. Now, unfortunately, we didn't really get many tomatoes in the greenhouse over the winter because it was really just too humid. I actually did a video on that for growing in a cheap greenhouse. I'll pop the link above. It is definitely worth the watch if you have a cheap greenhouse or any greenhouse for that matter. But I was still able to get lots of cuttings from the plants, which was fantastic. Although we didn't get many tomatoes, we still did get beautiful, big, bushy tomato plants. And I was able to start my plants early for the spring, so that was a bonus. So to prepare the beds here, we put down some aged animal manure and then we've just topped the bed with some loosened mulch. Now I really love using mulch in the garden and trying to keep everything mulched as much as possible because that really does help to build up the health of the soil. So I suggest keeping the beds mulched in your garden. Now, last season when we grew Roma tomatoes in the garden, I had a bit of a bug problem, particularly with fruit fly and the shield bugs. So with these Roma tomatoes, I'm going to see if I can try and build a bit of a hoop system where I can cover the plants with either bug netting or shade cloth because they were affected by the high temperatures we had in summer as well. But they are looking really good for the most part. I've got 31 plants here and I've got a bit of a head start on the spring season, which is exciting, and hopefully we should get a lot of Roma tomatoes that we can use for canning in the kitchen. This garden bed here is 10 meters long, but it's a bit wider. It's about 1.2 meters wide, and we've actually got all of our garlic planted in here. The garlic is going really well. They're not going to be ready for a bit longer, maybe another couple of months. But in total, we planted about 250 cloves of garlic. So we've got around 250 plants in this garden bed, and they're looking really nice. The variety that we have planted in this garden bed is called Australian Purple, I think. I'm going to have to check my notes. But it's looking really lush and lovely right now. I'm so excited to not have to buy garlic from the store, but the goal for this garlic here is to mainly save a lot of the cloves so we can plant them out again next year. Probably in the paddock we'll have a bit of a bigger garlic patch. In this area of the garden behind me, we've got another archway trellis. However, it's not as long as the one in the garden over there. It's about 3 meters long, so it's a bit of a shorter archway, but it reaches over from both garden beds, and these garden beds are a little bit wider as well. They're about 1.2 meters wide each, so we've got a good amount of space on either side of the mesh panel here. At the moment it does look pretty full. We've got quite a few different plants in here. We've got some Silverbeet in the middle here. Down the front here we've got a few different things. We've got some different varieties of lettuce. We've got some celery, 2 different types of beetroot. The varieties of beetroot that we're growing is beetroot Detroit, I think, and the other one is Golden Detroit. I think they are the varieties that we're growing this spring and summer. I'm actually growing some different types of rockmelon in this smaller archway, which is really exciting. The varieties that I've got growing are rockmelon, Hales Jumbo, and the other one is rockmelon Honeydew. And I have planted out some seedlings just yesterday afternoon. I've got a lot of those seedlings, so I didn't mind planting them out and just seeing how they go. If they don't make it, I'll probably wait a couple of weeks until the weather warms up a bit more and then plant them out again. But I've planted them out, I'll see how they go, and I'm really excited to see if we can get them growing up and over this archway. Behind me here, we've got some borage. As you can see here, this is just a big mass of borage, and I didn't actually plant this. It just came up by itself. There's actually a few different plants here. It came up by itself, and so I thought I would just leave it. We did grow borage in the garden last year, and they say that once you've got it in your garden, then you'll have it in your garden forever, because as long as you let it go to flower and set seed, those seeds will blow throughout your garden and you'll have new borage plants popping up, which I don't mind because they look so pretty and they're a wonderful plant for pollinators as well. In this area of the garden, we do have some more archways that, as you can tell, I really do like to utilize the vertical space rather than growing along the ground. Now, I know I do have a great size garden, which is fantastic, but I really like to extend on that to grow vertically so I can still grow more crops in the space that I've got. So just here, they are just 2 small archways, and they were actually just offcuts from the other panels that I've got. And so they're only about probably maybe 45 centimeters, 45 to 50 centimeters wide each archway, and then we've got a bit of a gap and then another archway. These ones last year I grew some snake beans on them, which was pretty cool. This year I think I'm going to grow some luffas or some guinea beans. I haven't started those seeds yet because on the seed pack it says that you need to soak them overnight, and I just keep forgetting. So I may do that today, but that is the plan for this part of the garden. Down the bottom here, we've got some different things growing. We've got some celery, which was self-seeded. I didn't plant that. I tend to have celery popping up all over the garden because I grew it several seasons ago and let it go to seed, and now I just have celery popping up each year, which is great. I never have to start celery seeds. I've also got some fennel here, which is odd because I haven't grown fennel in the garden before, so I'm not sure how that popped up, and I didn't start the seed, so I've just got a fennel plant there. I do have fennel seeds to plant, I just haven't gotten around to planting them yet, so that's very interesting how the fennel is here. It's not in the garden bed, it's a bit in the pathway, but that's okay. I've also got some lettuce, which is looking a little bit sad. I had some snow peas growing along these archways this winter, and the snow peas kind of crowded out the lettuce a little bit, which made them a bit sad and leggy. So hopefully now that the snow peas are gone, the lettuce will bounce back. We will see. We're here in one of the netted garden areas of the garden. I've actually got 2 different areas of the garden that I've surrounded with some insect netting, like what you can see behind me. And on top we have some shade cloth. I actually put shade cloth over the top of this structure last summer when we had a bit of a heat wave, and the plants in here were suffering quite a bit. They just weren't handling the full-blown sun. So I put the shade cloth over the top, And then I ended up surrounding it with insect netting because we were getting some fruit fly and some shield bugs as well. This spring and summer I am growing some tomatoes in here. The variety that I've got going is called Tomato, and we grew them in the garden last year, and they are just really nice. They grow a big size cherry tomato, probably about that size. So they're a decent little cherry tomato, and they are so full of flavour. They're actually one of my favourite varieties to grow, and that's why I'm growing them again this spring. Now the plants, as you can see, they are a good size already, and that's because I grew the tomatoes over the winter and I was able to take cuttings again for these plants. So I've got the ones on this half of the garden already planted, but then the ones behind me here, as you can see, they are still in pots. So I started planting them out yesterday afternoon, but the day got away from me, so I only was able to plant out half. So I'm going to do that this afternoon. To prepare the beds, we've put down some mushroom compost and just some pelletized chicken manure. And then we've just given it a really good covering with some sugarcane mulch. The soil looked okay. As I was planting these plants yesterday, there were quite a few earthworms, which was really nice. And as the tomatoes grow, I'm going to be trellising them using a tomahawk system, which I used in the garden last year. I think I did a video on that where I was trellising cucumber plants using a tomahawk system. I'll pop that link above. But it works really well. The only thing is, as you can see, I have planted them quite close together. They're about 30 centimetres apart. And now if you're going to plant tomatoes that close together, you really need to make sure that you're staying on top of pruning them and keeping them to a size so they're not going to get too crowded out and they're not going to impact the plant next to them. So they're about 30 centimetres apart. I grew them that close last year, and I did have to come out here every few days and just give them a bit of a trim back the leaves, and they did pretty well. This part of the garden is where we grow most of our capsicum plants, and as you can see, there is a frame over the whole garden section, and that's because we actually had a greenhouse plastic cover over the frame, and that is how we were able to grow capsicums over the winter. And it actually worked really well. It was always really nice and warm in here on a cold winter's day outside. But as you can see now, we have taken off the plastic and we've actually covered it with some insect netting. Now, we've got a big open doorway here. As you can see, there's no insect netting on the doorway, which is a job that I still need to complete, and I will have to get that done in the next week or two, just so there's not a big open doorway for the bugs to make their way in. But I'm hoping that the insect netting is going to help with the fruit fly problem that we had last summer. The reason why we've got the insect netting is because last summer we had a big problem with fruit fly and we actually weren't able to harvest that many capsicums. So I'm really hoping the bug netting is going to help with that this spring and summer. The fruit fly don't tend to come out until summertime, so I'll see how it goes, and if it does work, I'll be sure to keep you updated and let you know. Now, you may be able to see that there's a whole bunch of strings in here holding up the capsicum plants, and although it looks a little bit messy, it is doing a great job. Otherwise, the plants were snapping from the weight of the capsicum. So I've just attach some twine up to the metal beams here, and it's working really well. So this area of the garden is 3 garden beds, and I think I've got about 8 capsicum plants in each garden bed. So we've got a decent amount of capsicum plants here. So I'm really excited to make some pasta sauces and some salsas this summer. We'll see how the harvest goes. In the garden bed behind me, we've got some more onions growing, and the variety here is called red Burgundy, which is a purple onion. We grew this variety in the garden last year, and it actually went really well. We got some really nice size onions, really big size onions, which was awesome. I actually planted all of my onions in the garden in soil blocks. Now, one of the reasons why I love to do that was because in each soil block, I had planted about 5 or 6 onion seeds, and when I plant them out in the garden, I just place this soil block and all of the onions grow in together, and as they grow, they just kind of move apart to make space for the growing bulbs. And I still got really big onions last year, so that obviously wasn't an issue with them being grown together. It went really well. Now, if you haven't heard of what a soil block is, I did do a video. I think I was planting broccoli seeds in a soil block, so I'll pop that link above there. But I love growing onions in my soil blocks, and then it was just really easy to plant out. You're not interfering with the root system when you plant them out. Now, the purple onions, this variety, doesn't store as well as the brown variety, so you do have to use them a bit quicker. Now, if we can't eat them fresh, then I will probably do some preserving. I might dry some. I'll have to see how I go. Now, in the garden bed behind me here is some broad beans, and as you can see, they have fallen over. They weren't being trellised, and they were okay. They were doing really well until we had a big windstorm come through and knocked them over. Now, they're still growing. They're still looking really nice. For now, I'm just going to leave them and see how they go. Now, once I harvest these, I think I'm probably just going to grow some sunflowers in its place. It's against this shed wall here, and I don't really have any other plants. I might maybe some lettuce. I really love having the sunflowers in the garden, so I'll probably plant some sunflowers when I pull out the broad beans. In the garden bed here, this variety of onion, you do tend to harvest earlier than the brown variety, so I'm not quite sure what I'm going to plant in here yet. Maybe some more cucumber or some lettuce. I will have to see when the time comes. The garden beds behind me are a bit of a mixture of different things. I've got a lot of ever-bearing onions, so spring onion, growing in the middle here, and some of them are going to seed, which I don't usually like them going to seed because they're very easy to multiply on their own, but the flowers look so pretty, and I just forgot to come in and snip off all of those seed heads. So I will have some of them going to seed. But I've also got some lettuce going to seed in this garden as well. I've got some broad beans in the middle, so they're just a bit of a mixture of different things. Now, I don't really know what I'm planting here just yet this spring and summer, possibly some zucchini, but if I want to do that, I'm going to have to clear out a fair bit of the garden because it is very full at the moment. But right now it looks lovely, and we do eat a lot of spring onion, so I don't mind having a lot of plants. Thank you so much for joining me in the garden. I hope I could inspire you and encourage you a little bit, perhaps give you some ideas on what you might like to do in your gardens or some of the plants that you might like to plant. I hope you really enjoyed this video, and if you did, please make sure that you give it a like, share it around, and subscribe, as that's going to help my channel out a lot. And I really want to try and encourage as many people as I can to start growing their own veggies and to share just how easy it really is. Well, I hope you all can get out into your gardens today to plant some seeds, plant some plants, grow some food, and try and be a bit more self-sufficient. But until then, I will see you all next time. Bye!